This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate to have as our guest Montgomery State Senator Kirk Hatcher. Kirk is a rising star in Alabama politics and a really quality gentleman, renowned here in Montgomery. He was serving the House for a short time, and then an open Senate seat came open here in Montgomery, and he ran for that and won it overwhelmingly. So we have Kirk on the show every year to talk about the session, and we're in the middle of the session, and we're so proud he took time out of his busy schedule to be with us. Thank you, Senator Hatcher.
Pleasure being with you, always. Always.
Senator, I always like to start this off by telling folks kind of where your district is. I do this with Senator Chambliss and with Senator Barfoot. I like the three of y'all River Region senators come on every year and tell your viewers and listeners and y'all's constituent what's going on in the legislature. Theirs is more, going around the counties and all. Like
right.
Barfoot comes in and gets Pike Road and East Montgomery and Wind Lakes. But then it goes in and gets Crenshaw County and goes up and gets part of Elmore. And then Chambliss has got a toggle. He goes all the way and gets up Coosa and everything.
That's right.
But you really are just Montgomery.
That's right. 75%. 75% of Montgomery. And the mayor, likes to mention that the only person who has more constituents is the Mayor Reed himself, second to the number of constituents I have. So, yeah.
Talking about that, you and Mayor Reed here in Montgomery, I wrote a column about this, and I learned the information from you, probably from talking on this show or lunch or something. There's a tremendous Morehouse connection in Alabama politics right now, and you may have been one of the original ones. Of course, I just found out that Earl Hilliard from Birmingham was a Morehouse man, but y'all all grew up in your hometowns. You're here in Montgomery.
That's right.
Earl Hilliard in Birmingham, Randall Woodford in Birmingham. But here in Montgomery, every one of the top four leaders are Morehouse men. There's you, State Senator Kirk Hatcher, Mayor Stephen Reed, Probate Judge J.C. Love,
Correct.
And Circuit Judge Greg Griffin.
Correct.
All Morehouse men here in Montgomery. Randall Woodford, the mayor of Birmingham, Morehouse man.
Right.
And the reason I say that is I was watching Randall Woodford's re-election victory, and he gave credence and acknowledged the Morehouse men there. Yeah. They had come from all over the country, a lot of professional men who'd gone to Morehouse, doctors, lawyers, had stopped their practice to come campaign door to door for him for mayor of Birmingham.
That's right.
And he, in his acceptance speech, he thanked his mama, but secondly, he thanked, I want to acknowledge my Morehouse fraternity brothers.
Now the same happened for Mayor Reed.
Same thing. I thought that.
Remember?
Talk about y'all Montgomery guys.
There was a stage full of Morehouse men.
From all over the country.
Yeah. The goal for Morehouse and the person who still attracts in terms of recruitment to Morehouse, the most attention is Dr. King. Because
he was Morehouse.
Because Dr. King finished Morehouse in 1948. And one of the longest serving pastors here in the city, Reverend Thomas E. Jordan, who was just spotlighted in People magazine, who was baptized by Reverend Dr. King at his home church, Dexter, is a Morehouse graduate. And the school have always since 1867, 1867 had as a part of its mission.
It's always been private, though, hasn't it?
Always been private. Always seeking to have each of us understand the importance of going back into your community to serve. That was the goal. So wherever you go, whatever you do, and obviously always there was the push for you to go forward with your education to receive the terminal degree in whatever area would be your career track. But at some point, it was always important to go back home and serve the community.
Which is exactly what every one of y'all done.
Absolutely.
Y'all went off to Morehouse, Atlanta College, and then came back home to serve, every one of
And
y'all.
in many instances, I would say this, we didn't come back immediately. You needed to get more tooling, so to speak, because I'd worked not only in the Atlanta community, but in Miami and New York was the last place where I was before I came back home. But it was just always important, wherever you are, really, to serve. But to do so in your home, it's so incredibly precious and such a blessing. So I'm grateful for this. Grateful.
Saying that, you know, we know Alabama, so I know we know the Morehouse effect here in the state. A phenomenal thing of developing. By the way, J.C. Love, he was president of the student government at Morehouse, and then Randall Woodford followed him.
That's right. That's right.
As Morehouse
That's right.
president of SU. But
that's right. And I was chairman of the elections committee, which handled that entire process when I was in school for 2 years. It's a very political machine in those days. That was the 80s. And Greg Griffin was student government president.
Oh, was he president of
That's
student
right.
government?
That's right.
And he came back home.
Judge Griffin. Well, his home is actually North Carolina.
Okay. What brought him to Montgomery then?
He was actually, when he came to Montgomery, I believe it was by way of Selma, because he was working in Selma as a lawyer, a young lawyer, but he also worked for A.G. Gaston.
Okay, in Birmingham.
In Birmingham, if I got it correct, and I'm sure he'll correct me if I'm not. But he, and eventually he made his way to Montgomery because he was working in the Attorney General's office. And I don't know whether he started under Siegelman when he was AG or whether it was.
He wasn't Backslash too early.
What was the other gentleman who was there? Who
Jimmy
served
Evans?
Evans.
From Montgomery.
But he was definitely, that's where he.
That made sense. I bet he worked for Evans.
I think he worked for Evans.
Evans was from.
That was in the 80s.
He was a DA in Montgomery. Evans was.
That's right, for a long time.
Yeah.
And what's her name? Ellen Brooks worked as his
that's
deputy.
Right.
But
that's right.
That's what brought Attorney Griffin here. And of course, his wife, he met his wife in Selma.
Okay.
That's right.
Now, Senator, I bet you that Morehouse connection, we know the Alabama connection, but when Randall Woodford was making his acceptance speech, he acknowledged the mayor of Little Rock. And it was like mayors all over this, so it wasn't just Alabama where Morehouse guys. I mean, the mayor of Little Rock was a Morehouse man.
Right, right. But again, that was the whole goal of the school, and I would say most of the presidents at Morehouse, but especially the name that was on everyone's lips, whether they came up under him or not, was Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, who was so incredibly profound in the Morehouse experience in terms of creating and molding this version of a Morehouse man. He was not a Morehouse man himself. Went to Bates College.
He was president?
He was president for probably...
When y'all were there, when you were there?
No.
Before that?
He retired in '67.
Okay, so he was president when Dr. King was there?
Yes, sir. In fact, he was a mentor to him.
That's the one you were talking about before. Not the same guy who was at Dexter King Church, but this is a different person.
This is a different person, right. Because the one I was talking about before, who's a pastor here in Montgomery at Lily Baptist Church, was Reverend Thomas E. Jordan, who grew up in Montgomery, born and raised here. Dexter Church is his home church. And there's a picture, you should see it, of him as a little boy being baptized by Reverend Dr. King.
That would be great to have.
Oh, and he's on his ordination certificate in terms of signing it, along with Ralph David Abernathy and all those guys.
Good Lord.
Yeah.
Well, now, to talk about this, so your district don't go outside of Montgomery, inside the city of Montgomery?
It's in fact, it covers, again, about 75% of the city.
Name some of the areas in Montgomery that you have.
Well, all of West Montgomery, all of North Montgomery, the vast portion of the central portions of the city.
That area is Maryland was talking about you being from, Spring Valley. Where's that?
That's in the southern, maybe the south, almost west portion of the city. So Whitley Road area.
Was that in your old house district too? Spring Valley?
That was Representative McClammy. Right.
Speaking of that, I was going to ask you what Maryland, and I've heard from all over people in Montgomery, I didn't know you were a songster, but everybody talk about, boy, I tell you one thing, I forgot how Maryland described it. Said he broke the mold when he sang at Thad McClammy's funeral.
Oh, wow.
A lot of people mention that, what a good job you did.
Oh, you know, there's an old pulpit here who's now blessed memory, who was the ecumenical, for the ecumenical service for Bill Clinton. He gave the keynote address, the Reverend Dr. Gardner Calvin Taylor. And I remember Dr. Taylor came in my years in college. He preached the anniversary sermon for Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta every year. I went to the service in 1985. I was a sophomore in college. And a good friend of mine from Oakland, California, who had heard him several times at his home church, he said to me, he said, and when you hear him, you will need to have something in your pocket to jot it down. I've always carried something now because of that. He said, because you're going to want to jot down what he says. And one of the things he said about music that I never forgot, Dr. Taylor, who always zipped his robe up just halfway, and my understanding is that when he retired as the senior minister at Concord Church in Brooklyn, New York, whenever he mounted the pulpit, he would make the sign of the cross with his foot. And he had done it so long that he made an imprint
in the
carpet,
church?
in the church.
Are you serious?
And when he retired, they cut it out and framed it for him.
We just do it one time and it still made it in?
He did every time he would get in the pulpit.
Okay.
So going back to Ebenezer Church, when he made this statement about music, he said, I was talking to my wife on the other evening, and we were talking about what is it that so firmly connects folk across so many different lines, ethnicities and everything. He said, I think I have it. It's music. And he said, here's why. He said, because music is the speech of the soul when mere language is too feeble to carry the weight of your emotions. And it was that day of thinking about that, even in light of what was happening in Representative McClammy as a homegoing, of thinking about a song that he loved and his daughter requested.
What did you sing?
May the work I've done speak for me.
And that's not a common thing.
No, it's an old song from a group out of Miami called the Consolers.
Yeah, you don't hear that every thing. So that's what you say.
May the work I've done speak for me. When I'm resting in my grave and there's nothing that can be said, may the work I've done speak for me.
Where did Thayer go to church? Where was his funeral?
Well, the funeral was at True Divine Church, but he was a member of Day Street Baptist Church for many years.
You mentioned Lily Baptist a while ago. That's a pretty big church.
Yes, yes.
Lily Baptist?
Yes, yes.
What's the biggest church in your district, you think?
That's a hard one. I think, because we got a couple of big ones. In my home church, Pilgrim Rest.
So that's where you grew up too, isn't it?
I grew up, born and raised.
You grew up in Pilgrim Rest Church?
Mama carried me in the womb in the church. She was a baby in the church.
So she grew up in it too?
That's right. Never been anywhere else.
Do you have any brothers and sisters?
No brothers and sisters.
You're the only child?
That's it.
And you grew up in Pilgrim Rest, and then that's in the heart of your district.
That's
now,
right.
Isn't it?
That's right. That's
and
right.
you still go there?
That's my home.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah. Reverend Walt Ellis is a pastor. But I was always in the community here.
It's a Baptist church.
It's a Baptist church. I was, Steve, I was 5 years old when I did the first song publicly.
So you've been singing all this time?
It was an Easter service.
5 years old?
Yeah, I was a little 5.
Do you remember it?
That was a time when they would have to put me, stand me up in a chair so people could see me. and the running joke was that the folk would just give me a mic and say he would just start singing. yeah. This is, and then I started directing choirs and playing when I was 8. All in church.
So you always liked music?
Always been in church. Always.
Well, now you didn't major in music education, just regular. You're an educator, just generally speaking.
English. I majored in English and theology.
Oh, that was what I was going to ask you about
right.
Morehouse. Now, does Morehouse have a limited majors? Like most people major in education and theology, or what? Morehouse?
Well, it's
a business school, too, don't they?
No. Morehouse is liberal arts college, so no graduate studies at the school. So all of the disciplines.
No law school.
No law school. The School of Medicine, the Morehouse School of Medicine, operates independent of Morehouse. One of the former presidents, Dr. Hugh Gloucester, was instrumental in the founding of Morehouse School of Medicine, but it operates independent. Dr. Mays was instrumental in being a part of the founding of the Morehouse School of Religion, which operates on the campus of the Interdenominational Theological Center, where there are 7 different seminaries. But all of them operate, they have the name Morehouse, but Morehouse is a liberal arts, 4-year liberal arts college.
Go back to Pilgrim Rest. Now, do you remember getting up and singing at 5 years old?
I do remember that. I remember it very well.
Is your mama still living?
Yes.
Good. Did she get to go see you every Sunday?
Well, they were afraid. What they heard was that I was supposed to be going to the rehearsal for Easter service.
And I was in your church?
At my home church.
Oh, when you were 5 years old?
That's right.
Okay.
And you were supposed to be given your little one-liner that you would recite for the Easter service, which was, I think, sometimes the line was like, Easter Lily, boys and girls don't be so silly, whatever. So they were of the thinking that, Mom and my grandmother, that would be the case. So when Mom got home that Saturday, she said, we need to sit down and go through your lines. And I said to her, well, I don't have any lines. And she said, well, wait a minute, what's going on? So she called a lady who's a family member of ours, who's a blessed memory now, Maddie Baldwin. And she said to her, she said, this boy's telling us he doesn't have any lines. And she said, Miss Maddie told her, she said, Dad, he doesn't. She said, that boy can sing like nobody's business. She said, wait a minute, sing? When did this happening? So my grandmother, I understand, said to Mama, she said, you go on to church tomorrow because I'm not going to let this boy embarrass us.
She didn't want to go?
She didn't want to go. She didn't go. And that was the first time
she didn't want to be embarrassed?
She didn't want to be embarrassed. So they were laughing about that. She said, oh, no, you go sing, because we've never heard this boy sing. We've never heard him sing.
The other people that heard you sing?
They never heard me sing a lick. And so it was the funniest thing. I sang that song, I remember, in the key of E flat, and the song was entitled, I Know It Was the Blood That Saved Me. And it seems like there was not a dry place, I'm understanding, in the place. But it was quite an experience. I just remember not too long after that, the same lady, Ms. Maddie Baldwin, said to me, she said, now you know what? Now you need to join the church.
At 5 years old?
At 5. So I was 6 when that happened.
That's pretty early to join.
That's pretty early, yeah.
But you still go back to your own church?
Yeah, it's home church. Home church. When it was a little red brick building.
Do you sing in the choir or anything now?
I did. I
Do you
did.
still sing in the choir?
No, I do not.
Now, do you still teach too? You're not teaching anymore.
You know what I believe? I'm Head Start director for Montgomery.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, you're Head Start director for Montgomery.
Right. And so
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but once you're a teacher, you're always teaching.
Do you go back and go in the classroom sometime?
COVID has kept me from being able to do it.
Oh yeah.
But I'm looking forward to, because I got babies. I got from 6 weeks to roughly 5, 6 years.
In Head Start.
That's right. Roughly to 5 years of age. Yeah. So.
How long have you done that?
A year and some change. It's a real different kind of experience, a real joy. It's one of those programs, remember, that came out of the Johnson administration.
Oh yeah, I remember well.
And about 56 years old now, Head Start. So.
Yeah, that Johnson, it created a lot of things.
Oh, like this infrastructure bill.
Oh
that
yeah.
We're getting ready. I mean, these things are generational in terms of what will be happening.
You ever watch that series House of Cards with the Kevin Spacey? I've watched it 3 times. They refer to Lyndon in there. Now that was one tough fellow right there. Had a picture of him like when he was a majority leader, bend over, like he'd use his height as an intimidating factor. He'd looking down at some senator like he's strong arm people and things. He was
well,
tough. He was an East Texas.
Well, the word is
buddy.
The word on the Hill from some of them was that Representative Steve Flowers had that same stature to be able to do it.
I wasn't trying to.
So he had the same stature to do it.
Old Lyndon would do that. He was like get that big old and that East Texas draw.
Yeah.
He wanted to get things done in Washington.
Yes. But they had more of a working relationship.
They did. I always dreamed. I was talking to Senator Shepard one day recently, and he says, "What do you really think you do when you start?" I said, "Chevy, I want to go to Congress from the 2nd District. I want to be the congressman from the 2nd District and follow Bill Dickinson, what I thought I might want to do." Actually, I'd had an ancestor who was in that 2nd District. George Grant was a congressman from the 2nd District. He was a lawyer in Troy. Lister Hill was in that district from 26 to 38, had gone to Congress at 26 years old. Matter of fact, Kirk, at that time, the Montgomery, there were 2 machines based on families, the Hills and the Gunners. Okay, you were either in the Hill family machine,
that's right,
or the Gunner family machine. And Lister Hill came back, and his daddy was a physician and a prominent man, and he went to Congress at 26 years old, stayed 20. But who followed him was George Grant, because one of the machines up here backed him, and then they said Grant will carry the pike in Covington. You see, and even we split with I think he was a Hill man. If we split, we go there. But back to the 2nd District of Alabama, I'm convinced, Kirk, that 3-judge, you may not want to talk about this because maybe we want to get into some legislative issues, but there's something happening in the courts right now that I think is going to be upheld, and it's going to change congressional lines in Alabama. You had a 3-judge panel in Birmingham rule basically, and as you know this, but I'll just tell our viewers, the plaintiffs in the state, in the case, the Blackshear plaintiffs, says, look, they put all their eggs in the congressional basket, and I thought at that time that dog might hunt. You know, I didn't put 50-50, but the judge's ruling that basically what they said, look, if you give only 1/7, a 1 seat out of 7 to a majority African American Democratic district, and if your population is 27%, you see, so I really think the Supreme Court will leave that alone and it'll be upheld. If that's the case, I think you will have a majority 2nd District Democratic district.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You know,
and obviously the court is looking at, you know, obviously the concern they had about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And, you know, and it just, look, at the end of the day, the one thing you can't get around for empirical evidence are numbers.
Exactly.
You can't get around it. The numbers tell the story.
Exactly.
So I think we've come to that moment where we're probably heading for sure in that direction. But I want to go back to what I said to you, what we were saying just a moment ago. I long for the day, and sometimes I really do think that I may have been born in the wrong generation, because I'm, you know, there's something to be said for things were not perfect, you know, obviously 30, years ago, or what have you, and further. But at least that was the desire to work together. Now, I have to admit this. Since arriving, you know, even in the Senate, I see more of an opportunity that, you know, for people to work together. I see more of that happening, and it's very honest and straightforward. And I'm not saying it's not possible for that to have occurred when I was in the House. You just have more people. And so there's more of a, and especially when you have something like these super minorities and super majorities. And I'm against both. I just think, you know, I think in order for you to have an opportunity for robust debate, that must be something at stake for each of you. And not to the point where, you know, if Representative Flowers decides, you know, well, it's my way or the highway. I don't think you do the people a service. So my hope is that, you know, those coming in will have the courage, really, to lead. Just the courage. Because you know what I'm tired of? I'm sick of seeing people legislating their fears and their likes and dislikes and you know, these things that for the most part do not make their way back to the everyday person. And stop scapegoating on your constituents and saying that somehow or the other my constituents want me to do this. No, you have access, and you know this, to information that your constituents do not have. And what they need you to do is lead. Lead. Right. And so part of what I'm seeing, obviously, I'm a rookie, and so what I'm seeing in this quadrennium, as we end the quadrennial here, is, you know, people who are running potentially for re-election, just putting little things out there that they know, or these little hot button issues, you know.
The rough re-election.
Yeah.
Oh, I call them the re-election bill.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you know, let's not use this time in a moment like this, something we have not experienced in terms of this public health crisis around the world in 100 years. Let's not use this moment for that. Let's do something different.
You know, talk about that. I'm amiss as we sit here. The qualifying for deadline for running for office this year has passed, so you're running unopposed.
Thank God.
You hadn't got a Democrat or a Republican.
Oh my God.
But that's true of the whole of all three of you River Region senators.
That's right.
Barfoot hadn't got anybody.
That's right.
In the Republican primary. Chambers ain't got anybody in the Republican primary. You ain't got anybody in the Democrat primary. So y'all are all home free.
Oh, well, you know, and that just means we have to keep pushing forward on doing what it is we're doing to try to do what's right by the people. And that's a fact. And I think, you know, for me, Lord knows, you know, I've been through enough election cycles.
That's right.
And I didn't know if I had it in me to do any more. But I just think.
You gotta raise money too.
Oh my God, the whole process. And then of course, when I was running in the Senate race is when I ended up, unfortunately, with COVID. And struggled with that before we had a vaccine, as we spoke off camera. So I just thank God I'm here and healthy, and we're pushing forward to do the right thing for
Now
the people.
you really are being an educator by profession, as was Quentin Ross, who sat in that same seat. Y'all have a similar background in that y'all both educators by profession. But you pretty much are gravitating to education-related committees, aren't you?
Always. Always. I'm a firm believer. Dr. Benny Mays, that same guy who was president of Morehouse, says, I'm disturbed about man because we have no guarantee that when we train a man's mind, we will train his heart. And no guarantee that somehow or the other, that these are things that will help people to do better. And so I think education, educating folk, in every sense of that word, formally and informally, is so very important if you want to move people forward. And so for me, it's just very important. I say to my kids that I've taught, and they're all my kids. I have some who are 44 years old now that I taught, and one who's a rising star in Atlanta, city councilman for District 2, Councilman Amir Faroqi, who has done a fantastic job. He's all of the city is pretty much his, the heart of downtown Atlanta. And one of the things that you constantly have to say is that you can't hold people accountable for things they don't know. And so a part of the whole idea around educating folk is so that you can help them to know better, so they will seek to do better. And this is the very reason I made those statements today in our education policy meeting.
Well, we're glad to do it. We'll have to have, after the session, I'd love you to come back and talk about the issues of the session, because our time's up today. Folks, our guest tonight has been popular State Senator Kirk Hatcher, represents Montgomery in the State Senate. We thank him for taking time out of his busy schedule to be with us. We'll have him back after the session to talk more about issues. And we thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune in again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank you so much.
Thank you.